holding webinars, and it's always a pleasure to see that we have become a truly international organization, and people from everywhere are joining. And as you also know, we aim to provide these webinars for free to everyone, but of course we would welcome donations if you enjoyed it. And we'll continue to hold these webinars, and we will also continue to have them once the pandemic hopefully will be over. But for today, it's a great pleasure to welcome Dini Farhana Baharudin. I do not know if I pronounced it correctly. She has got a PhD and is a senior lecturer in the counseling program in the Faculty of Leadership and Management at the University Saint Islam Malaysia in Nilai. She holds a PhD in counseling, master degree in counseling and in education, and a degree in law. So she's really multidisciplinary. And she's also a registered and licensed counselor in Malaysia. And besides teaching, she is actively involved in research and publications, and her interests are in marriage and family, addictions, diversity and counseling, and holistic wellness. So a really broad perspective on things, and she will talk about addictions in the family in Malaysia today. And I'm looking forward about your study results, and thank you very much for for having this webinar. And I'll just hand over to you, and after the talk there'll be space for questions and comments. So the floor is yours, and thank you very much for presenting your results.
Thank you very much, Gallus, for that kind introduction. I am also delighted to be here to share my presentation, and hopefully it will benefit everyone. I'll share my slide. I have slides, and I'll do that first, if you don't mind. Is it up yet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I apologize because this is the webinar that's quite outside the regular time that you always had the webinar, but hopefully I can share some of my study with you today. My topic that I'll be sharing is on addiction and the family in Malaysia. Okay. This is actually part of an ongoing study funded by the Malaysian Ministry of Higher Education under a long-term research grant scheme. Okay. And this is my outline. I'll provide some background on Malaysia and the substance or drug addiction scenario. I'll share on the experience of affected family members. Additionally, I will also describe the existing interventions for the affected family members. Then I'll state the related legislation and policies in Malaysia. And finally, I'll make some reflections. Can you hear me okay? Is my voice loud enough?
It's perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you. I proceed. So some background on the Malaysian context. In 2021, Malaysia's population is estimated at 32.7 million as compared to 32.6 million in 2020. So out of this, the Bumiputra or the Malay and natives, their composition is 69.8%, followed by the Chinese 22.4% and Indians 6.8%, plus other ethnicity around 1%. The Malaysians adhere to the collectivistic culture, even though some are becoming more individualistic due to modern influences. Some characteristics of the Malaysian people, they are group oriented, so collectivistic society. The family relationship can be observed as interdependent. For example, adult children may not leave home until marriage, and the importance to preserve one's good name and reputation. Hierarchical relationship oriented can also be seen, for example, respect and authority of the elders. Malaysians also maintain harmony and stability. This is why some difficult family patterns or interaction may be left unaddressed. And one important aspect in the Malaysian society is religion and spirituality, which gives meaning and purpose in life. The people who propagate Islam around 61.6%, Buddhism 19.8%, Christianity 9.2%, Hinduism around 6.3%, folk religion 1.3%, other religion 0.4%, and no religion or unknown religion 1.7%. So that's a brief background of Malaysia. A little bit information about the Malay Muslims. In the Malaysian Constitution, Article 160, Section 2, Malay is defined as a person who professes the Muslim religion, habitually speaks the Malay language, and conform to the Malay custom. And because of this, the Islam influences almost every aspect of the life of the Malays and is central to the Malay identity. They uphold Islam as their religion and at the same time maintain their cultural values. Let's have a look at some of the Islamic view of some concepts. The Islamic view on the meaning of health and illness, they see this as a blessing from Allah, God, and a trust that should be preserved. Additionally, Allah may test humans through various trials to determine if the afflicted person will be patient, rely upon Allah in times of distress, and view it as opportunity for spiritual growth and purification. Healthcare in the Muslim society strongly based on preventive measures. For example, they emphasize on personal hygiene, dietary measures, for example, restriction in eating specific ingredients and drinking alcohol, and also avoid addictive habits or overconsumption of food. The Islamic view about substances, khamr, this is an Arabic word as mentioned in the Quran, or it's also, it means intoxicant, is any substances that covers, overcome, or befog the mind and the intellect and decrease the ability to think and feel rationally, negatively impacts the decision making of an individual and lower inhibitions. And even in small quantity or found in other products, these are also prohibited. Therefore, substances such as alcohol, heroin, cannabis, and others are also forbidden in Islam, whether consumed in small or large quantities. And Islamic scholars suggest that a contributing factor that causes one to turn to substances is due to diminished sense of faith in God and inability to control one's desire, stemming from sickness of the heart. Some view on the family. The family for the Muslims is a divinely inspired and predestined institution. It came into existence with the creation of human beings, starting from Adam and Eve. It can be the source of comfort, pleasure, and happiness, as well as source of intimidation and pressure. For the Muslim, they value connectedness, harmony within members, support between members as priority, and at times the self is not often differentiated from the family identity. Self-concept and self-esteem will have collective meanings depending on the family's reputation, approval, and reflections of the family's identity. So now we already have a brief overview of Malaysian context and the Malay Muslim. I'll move on to the addiction situation in Malaysia. Drug use in Malaysia, it begins in the early 1970s and at present are still critical and severe due to easy access, the geographical closeness to the Golden Triangle. And in the 2020 report from the National Anti-Drug Agency, this report shows the number of addicts is 128,325 individuals, in which 71,000 have 71,458 persons have undergone treatment and rehabilitation. And it is estimated that out of 100,000 people, there are a total of 394 drug users with a ratio of 1 to 254 person. Okay. In terms of gender, males showed a higher tendency to be involved in substance abuse and dependence, around 95.5%, than females, only 4.5%. And a significant number of those involved of Malay origin. If we look at the statistics, in 2020, majority of the Malays involved at 76.9%, followed by the Chinese 7.7%, Indians 5.9%, the Sabah natives 5.4%, Sarawak natives 2.5%, and others at 1.6%. So that makes the total number of 128,325. Religion is seen actually as a protective factor. The different ethnic group in Malaysia, they subscribe to different attitude and practices towards substances. And out of the three major ethnic groups, the Malays are less likely to consume alcohol compared to the Chinese and Indians. As we can see earlier in the earlier slides, alcohol is strictly prohibited in the Islamic law, and most of the countries with Muslim majority tend to have controlling policies with respect to alcohol. The types of drugs used commonly abused in this country include methamphetamine and amphetamine type stimulants, or the ATS, heroin, and also cannabis. So in year 2020, ATS shows the highest number of usage, followed by opiate type of drugs and also cannabis. There are also people using psychotropic pills and other types of substances such as the ketamine, ketom, cocaine, hallucinogen, and inhalant. Also, there are increase in number of people using polydrug, which means that they use 2 or 3 types of drugs concurrently. That's about 5.5%, and the non-polydrug users about 94.5%. And there's also this changing trend of drug problems from traditional drug of abuse. So previously, the drug that people use more is the opiate type, but now it's towards synthetic drugs. And this reveals the need for treatment to move in that direction. In terms of age, not only adults are involved in drug abuse, but also children, adolescents, and youth. Youth age 19 to 39 years is the category which is most involved in the drug abuse activities. That's around 65%, followed by adults age 40 years and above, around 32.9%, and adolescent age 13 to 18 years, around 2%. And the factors that causes them to be involved, majority is because of influence by their friends and also due to their own curiosity. For social economy, the socio-economic background of the people involved are from less fortunate family. Many of the adults who are involved are those unemployed, people working in private agencies, those who are self-employed, those with no permanent jobs, public servants, students, and also a pensioner, as we can see in the table. Most of them use drugs to gather more strength in doing their work, and having to work 2 or 3 jobs due to unstable financial status may cause them to resort taking drugs to increase their ability to work. Some of the treatment programs that exist in Malaysia, we will go through the category. The first one, government agency. This is under the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The name of organization under this category, it's regarded as one of the government agency, is the National Anti-Drug Agency. They have service centers, clinics, vocational centers, rehabilitation centers, and halfway houses. Status of their service, it can be inpatient, outpatient, and some service on aftercare. And people who need to go into these treatment facilities, they don't need to pay anything. It's subsidized by the government. Next category, government agency under the Ministry of Health. Name of organization are hospitals and clinics all over Malaysia. The service centers, there are methadone clinics. The services are more focused on harm reduction. There's also one-stop center for addiction, which the services are for various type of drug addictions, and service given by counselors, psychologists. clinical psychologist, and a psychiatric hospital for chronic cases of addiction. Status of service, the clinics and the One Stop Center are outpatient, while the psychiatric hospital is inpatient. And for the people to get into these services, there are just minimum fee, around 1 to 5 ringgit Malaysia. For the private agencies or the non-governmental organisation, there are various, and 55 of them are registered under the National Anti-Drug Agency, and the service centres are various, based on the continuum of care that is provided. The status of service, also inpatient, outpatient, and aftercare, and there are fees depending on the agencies. Fees can be hundreds or thousands ringgit Malaysia. Most of the treatment programs are using holistic approaches such as therapeutic community, peer support, traditional, complementary and alternative medicine, spirituality and religious method, as well as counselling. I'm moving on to the next slide, which is on the affected family members' experience. So, significant amount of study can be found in Malaysia. Most of them refer to the effect of drug use on the individual user and etiology behind the addiction, as well as methods of available treatment. However, there is still lack of literature in Malaysia that tries to understand the affected family members and their experiences. But as the rate of drug addiction continues to rise and trends begin to change, so also the suffering of the family. This includes the extended family members, especially if they live together or live close by. In our collectivistic culture, the user usually maintain connection with their families by either living with their parents or in daily contact with at least member of the family. And the number of the affected family members, actually it could be more than what is estimated, and it is, as previous studies mentioned, it's under research. So within the family, affected family members' experience are related to the family functioning rules and boundaries. There are, for example, manipulation, stealing, self-neglect, running away, and threatening behaviors which disrupt the everyday living of the family and needing them to adjust. So there are interrupted rituals, roles, and routines for other family members. And conflict at home become the norm due to the person's cycle of altered state of mind during use and withdrawal. Family interactions become dysfunctional as they struggle through daily conflicts, and addiction consumes them and becomes the family's main concern, whether deliberate or not, and the negative impact associated with it cannot be ignored. So within the family, we can see experiences in terms of physical, psychological, and financial. For physical effect, incidents involving money and possession, especially when the affected family member felt pressured to give or lend money, and requests are often accompanied by threats or violence, or to the extent of assault or even homicide. And unemployment or job loss cause them to steal or pawn the family's belongings and may resort to crime when resources at home are exhausted. So it's a very difficult situation for the family members, whereas they are constantly being threatened, and sometimes violence are involved. For psychological experiences, starting from the discovery of the illicit drug use by a loved one until their recovery, uh, it leaves significant emotional and psychological impact to most of the family members. So basically, their journey is actually a lifelong one. And psychological include not only limited to stress, shame, shock, guilt, anger, denial, helplessness, depression, anxiety, sleep difficulties, financial worries, suicidal thoughts, marital discords, losing trust, feel betrayed, and trauma-related symptoms also can be seen in the affected family members. And in terms of financial, the family members need to replace the role of the addicted member, especially if it relates to their parents or people who are providing the food. They need to pay the bills and expenditure for the family, and as a result, financial burden may occur and cause more strain to the family relationship and negatively impact the family's functioning. In some cases, it becomes impossible for the family to manage the family's economic hardship, and difficult to separate this characteristic as part of the disease, not part of the individual whom they love. So, these are the experiences that have been found from the literature in Malaysia. External or contextual factors, there are two here that I'd like to highlight. The first one is family residence. The residents are not conducive due to lack of the financial stability. Location of the family residence may be in an identified high-risk area and close to the place where supply of the substances is easily accessible. And sometimes they may be visited by friends that will provide them with free drug and substances as a start. So again, they will go back to relapsing and abusing substances again. Stigmatization, negative judgment, and discrimination. The society thinks that it is an indication of a failure of the family in shaping the individual. So the family members, they may be ignored, blamed, humiliated, underestimated, and eventually this will lead to emotional or mental health problem for the affected family members. Family members also may lack awareness and knowledge. They do not know the resources and procedure related to helping the addicts or themselves. Also, some service providers' attitudes in providing their services to these people. Sorry, it might not be just attitude, it could be also readiness for them to provide the services. So the traumatic experiences associated with addiction felt by a family members is an experience they may never be able to recover from. As they try to assist in managing their loved one's disease, the family themselves suffer from stress, suicidal thoughts, devastation, abuse, violence, and anger. Self-confidence and self-image of the family members would be tarnished because of verbal attacks by the addicted member or as a consequences of what others say or might be thinking. And this also caused the affected family members to isolate themselves, keep it a secret, and they don't want to probably get help. I divided people who are affected into 5. First is parent. This is based on search on the Malaysian literature talking about people who are affected by the addiction. Most of the literature are talking about parents and how they are affected. They are shame, blame, self-blame, guilt, feeling of failure, and often the feelings are buried or ignored. And this results in physical illness, emotional and psychological issues. Sometimes they keep it to themselves. They cannot talk about it with their other family members. Regular verbal disputes and physical confrontation result in a severe lack of trust. In some cases, they are in conflict of protecting and assisting while watching the child struggling and making their own mistakes, and sometimes relapsing, failing to recover. Literature on child are scarce. Even though there are reports talking about the negative impact, long-lasting and permanent, that may influence the child's life. The children also may have issues on depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and suicide attempts, and they are prone in getting involved to the same circumstances. While for siblings, this is a much less explored population. However, previous literature show that there are negative impact. Even some of our interviews with siblings, they shared their feelings and their experiences, and there is negative impact on them. They lack attention that they need to receive from their parents, sometimes feeling lost and neglected. They may still try to create a sense of connectedness with the addicted person so that they can maintain their relationship with them, but in their heart they don't really like it. They don't really like the sibling who are involved in addiction. It is hard for them to make that connection. For partners and spouses, there are literature on this, but not being explored in depth. Some of the literature are on domestic violence, transmission of infectious diseases such as the HIV/AIDS, and also codependency. And others are also affected. This expand to non-immediate extended family members and also such as close friends and neighbors, but no specific study on this particular people has been found. So going to those people who are affected, if we can get this diagram, we can see that all the systems levels are actually related to the experiences from the individual level. Their psychosocial development might be affected, immediate family, the family functioning, the family life cycle, also for the extended family. In terms of community, neighborhood, their work, friend, religion, organization, elements of stigma, their place of residence, and also social, cultural, political, and economic. For example, the legislation and policy, supply, demand of the drugs are also affected. So I guess all the levels in the whole system are actually affected. It's not just the family member or the individual person who are abusing the drugs, but also the whole system. Moving on to coping, living in a family with emotional roller coaster on a daily basis due to addiction makes it crucial for family members to find effective coping strategies. And sometimes they feel like giving up halfway when they cannot see any changes or lack of seriousness in recovery. But just as the person with addiction need to find healthy ways to cope with his or her disease, the affected family members also need to do so as well. And previous studies have shown that coping strategies utilized by family affected by substance abuse is one of the important factors that may impact treatment outcome for the substance abuser. So in Malaysia, when we did the review, previous study highlighted two types of coping: problem-focused coping as well as emotion-focused coping. And Jamir Singh, this is a more recent study, found 6 types of coping strategies that affected the family members' use: assertive coping, supportive coping, inactive, emotional, and controlling coping strategies. And findings show not only the family members utilize coping strategies to deal with the addicted member in their family, but they also attain support from extended family members and friends, as well as relying on God through religious and spirituality practices. This relates to religious coping, and also social support obtained from counselors at the Rehabilitation agency to assist them in understanding the issue better. Some cultural challenges, if we go back to the earlier slides, we can see how the culture can become a hindrance for the family member to get their help or treatment. So the first one, preserving family harmony or the hierarchical component or characteristic. The unhealthy role, this allow for unhealthy role to emerge in the family, and they tend to become enablers or rescuers. They will try to take over responsibility of buying, or they might be buying, or they might be using the substances together with the addicted person, or covering up for them. And if they are enmeshed in their roles, this will perpetuate the continued substance abuse. The next challenge is on the characteristic of preserving good name and reputation. Because of these characteristics, the family members might be reluctant to seek for help. They may have fear or shame of the consequences when they disclose the information about addiction in their family, and they don't want to bring shame to the bigger family member, to the extended family. And they are pressured to be hidden, might end up not seeking for help, and indirectly this also enable the continuation of the addiction. Another challenge, cultural challenge, is on stigma. Because of the society members still subscribe to the moral model of addiction, most of them, they view addiction as a defect in one's character or a result of human weakness, and see it as family lacking the ability in shaping the individual. So this also become a challenge for the family members to get help. Additionally, when we go through what intervention exists for the affected family members in in our country, there are 5 that we found. The existing intervention are mainly on the individual addicts and not their family members. But this is from the research. When we go through what really is there, we found this. First is the family visit. It aims at providing support for the person in recovery rather than the family itself. It is regularly offered at residential inpatient treatment, particularly at prisons, the cure and care centers, and also private private centers. Most of the time, individuals in recovery are allowed visit from their families during appointed times, usually during the weekends. And some centers also encourage family gathering, especially during special celebrations. At time, this is usually at the private treatment centers. They also give permission to leave the center for a few days or weeks to join their families at home. Next intervention is the family support group. It aims at peer support. As peer support brings families together to reduce the stigma and enable the participant to expand their social network because they have become socially isolated due to the situation. This is provided by the National Anti-Drug Agency for family members. It can also be found in private treatment centers, and a recent effort is having an online family support group using Facebook. There's no information, unfortunately, on Al-Anon family groups and also Al-Atin, but probably our team haven't really go deeper, so that's why maybe we did not get that information. Probably it's there, but we still need to dig further. Next type of intervention is the family psychoeducational program, one of the evidence-based practice. The core elements include support, recent information about the problem, its presumed etiology, treatment options, skill building, and it also provides relevant techniques on management of symptoms. All these elements are there in the family psychoeducational programs. And it can be found in most private rehabilitation centers, usually in the form of groups, small groups, or mass, monthly, or at some places 4 times a year. And there are some programs at school, but more on the prevention focus. Next is specific family therapy or counseling. This is rarely provided at treatment and rehabilitation centers, but can be found at hospitals and counseling or mental health clinic or private treatment agencies by request or by referral. However, there are some training issues here. Some of the providers only have like basic counseling or only have training in family therapy, so that's still an issue. The family members can opt for individual, couple, or family therapy when they face mental health issue, which relates to stress and strain of dealing with addiction. But it exists, only that it's by request of the family member themselves or by referral of the counsellor or the treatment provider. Finally, the last type is crisis helpline or psychosocial support. For this intervention, it provides immediate crisis assistance, especially in cases relating to abuse, neglect, and domestic violence, which are quite frequently reported by the affected family members. and provide psychological support to the family as their issues are being listened to with empathy, and give information and referrals to those needing resources, among of the other services given. It caters all type of crisis issues in general, and there is only one specifically for addiction issues, which is provided by the National Anti-Drug Agency. It's called the Hello AADK. It operates from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. Some limitation or setbacks in regards to the intervention. Of course, the research on the family-based treatment modality in Malaysia has also been scarce. So the intervention that we found was not really documented. It's not being researched. It's not being published. So we had to interview, we had to try to find the data all over the place. Additionally, some limitation on the intervention relates to the affected family members themselves, their attitude on help seeking, seeking counseling, admitting problems, and revealing family secrets are closely related to stigma and the moral model, and also the concept of saving face from shame. The affected family members also may lack awareness and knowledge. They may not even know the existence of the interventions, or they may not know or fully understand how they are affected or what their role are in addiction and in supporting recovery. Additionally, for the affected family members, their motivation themselves or their readiness to participate, because going for help, it involves time and energy. It's not easy, especially for those from the lower and middle class background. The setting up of suitable time in getting all the family members together, especially when working with the whole family. And then also issue on the financial costs. Earlier we have seen some of the treatment centers, there are fees that need to be paid. So there's need for some incentive in terms of logistics and also monetary to be provided for the affected family members in order for them to get access. And also for providers or counsellors delivering the service, there's still lack of training in providing services for the affected family members. I'll move on to drug laws in Malaysia legislation. We have a few laws which directly address issue of drugs. We have the Dangerous Drugs Act. This is the main drug law. It regulates the importation, manufacturing, selling, possessing, exporting, and usage of all types of drugs, and provides for the punishment of various drug offences. Then we also have a Dangerous Drug Special Preventive Measures Act, which provide powers to the executive to detain a drug trafficker for up to 2 years at a time without going through the process of a court of law. It provides the police power to detain an individual for not more than 60 days for drug-related offences. And we have Dangerous Drugs Forfeiture of Property Act, which provides the authorities with the power to trace, freeze, and forfeit the assets of the drug trafficker. And also Poisons Act, which provides for the control, sale, import, and export of poisons, precursor, and other essential chemicals. However, most of the treatment of the people who are involved in addiction, we use the Drug Dependence Treatment and Rehabilitation Act. It deals specifically with the treatment and rehabilitation of drug dependence enforced by the National Anti-Drug Agency. in the Ministry of Home Affairs to reduce the burden on the police force, and it provides the opportunity to undergo drug treatment and rehabilitation services on voluntary basis as well. Okay. We also have policies related to drugs. For the drug policy, we have the National Drug Policy 2017. This is an extensive policy that incorporates both demand and supply reduction approaches and underlines the following 5 thrusts of action: preventive education, treatment and rehabilitation, law enforcement, harm reduction, and also international cooperation. One I think that I want to highlight is in Trust 2 related to treatment and rehabilitation, section 2.4.5, which mentioned about how services and treatments of rehabilitation are targeted at individuals or groups as follows, which includes the codependents or individuals affected by addicts behavior, including the mother, father, partner, child, family members, friend, and employer. So basically, this section shows that affected family members have the rights. They actually can go and get treatment due to the circumstances that they are facing. And for the family policies, we have National Family Policy. This is a policy for prioritizing family perspectives in all socio-economic development efforts to ensure a quality generation, and its goal is to develop prosperous, healthy, and resilient families to ensure social stability. There are 8 principles, but I'm just going to highlight 4, which are, I think, quite relevant to what we're talking about today. The first principle: family has its own inherent strengths, responsible for the continuity of the next generation. Principle 3: various family structures resulted in different needs. Principle 5: knowledge and information as the basis for family wellness. And Principle 7: family members have basic rights and protection to guarantee self-dignity, which all, I think, goes back to the rights for the family members to get help. Some of my personal reflection when going through this study, I feel like there is need for policy change. Probably suggestion of mandatory inclusion for the family into the treatment. For now, it's not mandatory. If you remember, the family members, to get treatment, they need to be referred, or it's by their own request. But it would be good for the country if mandatory inclusion of the family into treatment is being considered. Also, training for organization or agencies that provide the services to be more family focused. In terms of awareness, I think in our country now, especially after the pandemic, more people are aware of the services, the mental health services that exist, and training are also provided in our own university. In my own university, we provide specialized training for master's level in family and in addiction, and there are, I know in other universities, in other organizations, they have occasional workshops for increasing the awareness, the knowledge, attitude, and also skills in getting the providers to be much more family focused and able to provide the services to the affected family members. Also, utilization of technology to deliver services by using telehealth, and also for providing training or education to not only the people providing services, but also to the family members themselves, due to, you know, maybe it's difficult for them to come to the training, the place which provide the services. So it is also wonderful if technology can be utilized. Um, Another reflection of mine would be awareness campaign for family mental health plus the affected family members focus needs. As we know earlier in my earlier slide, the family members may not know that they have all these facilities, all these services available, and they can actually get help from them. So more awareness campaign can be suggested. Also, outreach clinic, agencies going to the identified at risk or high risk area, maybe providing mobile services. I know some of the agencies have already done this, but it needs to be increased in number, and also setting up services at mosques or other religious places of worship for easy access, reduction of stigma, and community involvement. There are some there's one mosque that previously provide services such as this, but I think it can be expanded. And also, from the Islamic perspective, prevention rather than treatment focus, the strengthening of the family itself to prevent more people getting involved. So strengthening the family functioning, strengthening their values, strengthening their spiritual and religious practices. So that's also another recommendation. Here are some of the references that that's it for my presentation today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your excellent talk. And I just, although we have already moved quite forward in time, I see there's already one question in the chat. And the question is, mandatory inclusion of family into treatment poses some drawbacks. Have these been considered, given that it is always best to have participation on a voluntary basis? Otherwise, there might be greater resentment and drawback on the addict in recovery, which is not conducive on their recovery, especially if some of their family members resent having to change their lives, attend meetings, counseling, and losing work time, etc. What would you say to that?
Thank you for that feedback. Yeah, I guess I I haven't considered that, their resentment. Um, yeah, I'll take that into consideration. So I think that's just a feedback, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would also say I think it's mainly an empirical question because it depends on cultural issues. For example, I've seen that in Italy it is quite common to include families into treatment of alcohol-dependent individuals by just telling them when they come to detox that their family should show up the next day. And I'm not sure whether this really is associated with drawbacks, but of course, more research would be needed on that. Um, maybe I've also a kind of a question or a comment. And this is, as far as I understood you, there is almost nothing available for family members who are just, well, worried and who have got addicted family members who are not in treatment. And this is something which made me wonder a bit because I think most of what you've been talking about was based on this group of, say, 128, 129,000 individuals with addictive disorders. And I personally believe that quite often family members are the first ones who come to seek help. And I wonder whether this number of 128,000 is might be a severe underestimation regarding effects of addiction within society and also on families. For example, I just checked on WHO. There's an estimation that the number of individuals addicted to alcohol in Malaysia is assumed to be about 1.1% of the population, which would be far more. And then, of course, as far as I understood it, and you probably could correct me with this, is that also in Islamic cultures, behavioral addictions are more common, like, say, gambling or also pathological use of the internet. So there are some kinds of addiction that you couldn't consider given the numbers you told us. And I just wonder whether there might be a chance to go a bit more into detail with research or help offers regarding other kinds of addiction or also addictions that are under the radar because people haven't had any contact to the treatment system.
Yes, thank you for that question. The statistics that I've shown just now is only for drug and substance addiction. However, there are also people involved in gambling addiction, alcohol addiction, as well as other behavioral addiction, such as the internet addiction. Yeah, it's true. Those numbers are not included here. And I guess as you mentioned, we need more research on those other addiction. It's already there. The research are there, but it's not the focus that I presented today.
Yeah.
And for your information, for internet addiction, for example, like gaming addiction or cyber porn addiction or things like that. What was it? I lost my thoughts. People are more open to actually share compared to substance addiction, because parents feel like their children nowadays are involved in all those gadgets, so they want to talk more about those kind of addictions rather than substances. They ask for treatment, they ask for interventions on those kind of addiction compared to the drug and substance addiction. So drug and substance addiction is more hidden.
Yeah.
Because it's related to stigma.
And I was also wondering, like you did an excellent introduction regarding cultural issues in Malaysia, and I was wondering if anyone feels that someone close to them has got a problem with, say, substances or gambling or whatever, what would be the first point to turn to? Of course, it would be within the family, talking to others probably. But I wonder whether, for example, clergies or any religious institutions might be probably, especially within the Islamic population group, might be the first address to talk about issues if when they feel they can't solve it within the family. What do you think about that?
Yes, what you're saying is true. Most of the time, the family members, people close to them, significant others, but um, they also refer to imams or people at the mosque, as well as at schools, teachers, um, religious teachers sometimes also play an important role in dealing with this issue. Mm-mm. That's true.
Okay, there's
Sorry,
another.
it's not included in the. I think I forgot to include that in my presentation.
No problem. There's a next question in the chat. First, Colin Hutchin says, "Thank you for your fascinating presentation. Is it more difficult for AFMs to access support in rural areas?" Um,
Okay, for that question, actually in Malaysia, the National Anti-Drug Agency is available at many places, including the rural area. Um, it's just probably the family members do not know of those services. That's why the need for um, more awareness campaigns to be provided. And I think if at the rural area, teachers at school, counselors at school play a rather big role also in helping the family members.
okay. Then there's also I would say more or less a comment again, that substance addictions are also less likely to remain invisible or non-noticeable. So unlike behavior addictions that can go unnoticed by family members until the addict is in deep into their addiction, that makes public education and awareness imperative to help family members to see the red flags and get the addict help. So I would say, I would assume that you would concur with that.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, are there any further questions? I can't imagine that Richard has no question.
It's true, but I didn't really want to wake up my wife. But I'll ask a question anyway. Thank you so much, Dini. That was an absolutely fascinating introduction to a wide range of issues around both Malaysia and Malaysian culture and the problems of particularly drug abuse and drug problems and the effects on the family. And as you say, alcohol and behavioural addictions were on top of that. It struck me that many of the effects that you talked about are very similar, obviously, to what we have seen amongst family members across the world, and that's not surprising. But I think some of the things that are particularly different, not exactly unique, because we see them in other places of the world, but certainly different, are the impact of the various cultural elements that you talked about. So I think that the point about preserving family harmony at all costs, preserving the family's good name and dealing with stigma are particularly important issues which can get in the way of, obviously, of people seeking help for their own problems, but also of family members getting help for themselves. You came up with a whole set of reflections and recommendations, and I just wonder, what do you think you and other people like you can actually do in Malaysia to change this situation when you have such very strong cultural forces stopping people from seeking help?
Wow, that's a difficult question. I think we are now on our way of helping getting those family members to become more aware. In my own university, in my organization, we are trying to prepare our students to go out and help these people, not just the affected family members, but also our people in the society on their mental health issues. Myself, maybe volunteering more to help this population. I don't know, maybe I need time to think about it. And doing more research, of course. That's the main thing. Like, there's really lack of research and people are not aware of things.
Okay, thank you. So I see Jim has raised his hand and apparently has a question.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for your talk, Dina. I heard most of it. I had to go away just at the end, and also I've missed some of the questions and discussion. So if you have already answered this question, just say so and we'll pass on to something else. But because of the cultural factors, cultural variations, which you described so well, I'm interested to know what your opinion is about importing to Malaysia methods of counselling, for example, for affected family members, which have been developed in countries with very different cultures. I mean, we have developed the 5-step method in the United Kingdom, and other methods have been developed in the United States of America and in Germany and other countries. So do you think you can import Western, I don't know if one can use that general word, Western, can you import Western methods of counselling for family members, or should you develop your own methods on the basis of what you know about the culture and the harms that family members are facing in your own country?
Thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. Importing and also having a intervention from the ground. I think it depends. If we decide to import, there might be need for adaptation of the particular approach. But because, you know, trying to build something from the ground might take a long time, and also even though it's much more closer to the culture, but there's no harm in actually adapting and trying to suit whatever is good from the other culture to our own culture, probably including some components of the spirituality or religion, and I guess it needs to be researched more on the suitability of adapting. I mean, not just importing, just adopting it, but adapting it to suit the context. I guess that's my answer.
Yes, thank you. So importing with adaptation.
Yeah, somewhat like that.
Yeah.
Thanks. There's another question in the chat, which is just wondering if your research study explored and noticed gender differences among drug addicts in Malaysia, and if one gender was more likely than the other to get access to treatment and also family support.
Because the number for females is very low, that comparison, I guess, can't really be made. For now, I would say the same. They can access the treatment without any, they can access it. There's no differences in treatment of gender.
Mm-hmm.
But they have different, for the females, they have their own, if it's under the government agency, they have their own rehabilitation center, which is not similar to the ones for the males. So their needs are very much focused on the female needs.
Okay. Maybe I could just turn the question a bit around, and I wonder if in Western countries we look at help office for family members or programs, and if we do studies, we're almost always talking about female family members, and I just wonder if it's the same in Malaysia. So if family members get involved to any degree with the treatment, are we just talking about, well, the mothers, daughters, partners, whatever? Or is there a larger degree of male family members involved? What is your estimation? So if family members have contact to the treatment system, how many of them are male, how many are female? Are there any data on that?
I do not understand your question. I'm sorry.
Okay, so usually if, for example, you have someone with an addictive disorder who is in treatment and family members also engage in treatment, in Western countries, it's usually 90% female family members. So the male family members who are not addicted, they do not engage in treatment.
Okay.
And I wonder what it is like in Malaysia.
Usually, the whole family will be involved in the treatment, especially in the private centers, private agencies. If it's a female person in that agency are addicted, and the whole family will come to give support. However, sometimes the female are involved. They got, in the first place they got involved is because of the husband or the male partner.
Mm-hmm.
So the support given is not from that particular husband or that partner, because that partner is also going for their own treatment. So the extended family will come and give support to this particular person. Usually it's that way. The whole family.
Okay, the whole family, which includes male, non-addicted family members.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Father, mother, yeah.
Yeah, good to hear. And might also be interesting then to have a closer look, at gender differences regarding stress and strain the family members experience. Because this, I think, is also quite under-researched. And usually it's hard to get male family members for studies.
Because they are usually the father and mother both are concerned
Yeah.
with the member who's affected. Yeah.
Okay, so we are it's already quite late, and I guess it's especially late in Malaysia. I do not see any further questions in the chat. And as you noticed, there was quite an interest in asking you questions about the situation. So I hope you'll get good funding for conducting further studies and bringing the whole family issues forward in Malaysia. And I'm very confident that you're on a good move into this direction, and you've been so long involved and have done so much also within AFINet. So I wish you good luck and would like to thank you very much for your excellent talk. And to anyone else who's still there, I just would like to announce the next webinar, which will be taking place on the 22nd of February. And Peter Kelly from Australia will talk about Smart Australia and their Family and Friends program. And since it's Australia, which is even further east than Malaysia, we will start even earlier than today, 1 hour earlier. So I really hope to see you again at the next talk. And again, a lot of thanks to Dini, and yeah, hope to see you all in a month's time. And so goodbye. Anything to add, Richard? Did I forget something?
Very much Dini. Internet's not good here, so I'm going to go now. But thank you so much. Excellent talk.
Okay. Thank you very much, and see you. Bye-bye.